responsible for the world ranking events in the Football Commission, David Roach. So please, David, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Helga. Good morning, everybody. As I was just said, I'm David Roach. I've been the Football Commission member who's been looking after the world ranking events for the last 2 years now. As there's about 150 world ranking events every year, there's always been quite a lot to do. So I'm building on quite a lot of things I've seen over the last couple of years. Let's start the presentation. 2 minutes, what's happening here? Screen, that's good enough. And we shall have the presentation here in just a moment. Good. Are we there?
Yes, it looks good. Thank you, David.
Good. Thank you. Right. Let's begin. Sorry about that. Okay. Let's start. We're talking about a checklist, but let's just be sure we have the context. Just remember what the role of the IOF's event advisor at a world ranking event actually is. You are the advisor to the organizers and you're the helper, and what you're really trying to do is, as with the organizers, you want to make the event go well. You also have some other responsibilities. The rules say you have to ensure that the rules are followed and that mistakes are avoided. So in essence, overall, you are being the IOF's quality assurance agent. Mostly this is really, it's a big picture job, just checking what others are doing, but also the rules give you some specific obligations. You have to approve the bulletins for the event. There should be 2 at most world ranking events. And you have to approve that the start lists are properly compiled. And another specific job you have to do is to make sure that the results are uploaded to IOF Eventor on the day of the event, and that's the way that we can be sure that the world ranking lists are always correct and have the full integrity. So my question to you is, have you actually used a world ranking event advisor's checklist? And the short answer to that is no, you won't have done, because there isn't one yet. All we have at the moment is the material that the IOF has is targeted at the senior event advisors for the major events, the World Championships, the World Cup, JWOC, etc. What we have is there are guidelines for senior event advisor work, updated last year. Checklists for controlling the map making of high-level IOF events, again updated last year. And there is the senior event advisors checklist. Now this is quite a thing. I don't know if anybody's looked at this, but it's very long, it's very detailed, and it operates by looking at functional areas. So you don't have it in a chronological order, you just have it function by function. So halfway down page 1, you're already looking at things like volunteer clothing and have the accounts of the event been settled. So this is possibly a bit much for someone who's looking after what I would regard as a humble world ranking event. A big event in itself, but certainly not of the same order of magnitude as a World Championships. So what have we done? The first draft of a checklist has been put together. It's just in time for this seminar. When I said I would take on this seminar, I thought, oh yeah, that's all right. And then we realized we actually needed to actually have a special list. So what we've got is, so far, it's what I would describe as one person's thinking on the matter. It's not anything more than that. What are we going to try and do with this? Well, first of all, it's dedicated purely to the world ranking events per se. So these, all the IOF's major events and high-level events, those are also world ranking events. In fact, so you have slightly enhanced world ranking event points for taking part in these really big events. But what we're looking at here is what I would call pure world ranking events. But it should work for all sorts of world ranking events. There are various different sorts. You can have a world ranking event, which is a standalone world ranking event. The only courses that are put out are for the elite. Sometimes this is a national selection race. One or two other league events run in this way. Many world ranking events are also national championships. Some of those are just for the elites and some are for all the competition classes. So it's a world ranking event within a national championships for all the classes. And a lot of world ranking events are part of large public multi-day events with all the competition classes being offered. So we're not looking at 200 participants, we could be looking at 2,000 participants. In those cases, you as the event advisor are focusing purely on the world ranking event courses, 21 and 21 men and 21 elite courses. What are we trying to do? Well, on the one hand, we're aiming for simplicity. I realise that that's probably just going to be a vain attempt because these are obviously complex events, but we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. However, also to include some detail. Now, the devil is in the detail, as we've just seen from all the presentation that Aaron and the other senior event advisors have given. It's the little things that go wrong make a difference. So having a detailed list to look at, I think, is important. And what I've also tried to do is to explain the background and make references through the rules and to the World Ranking Events Manual. So you can see why things are being thought about as well as exactly what should be thought about. One of the things that is important is relating to IF Eventor. Some of you may recall I spoke about this last year at this seminar. So the checklist focuses on what happens with Eventor, right through from making the online application, which goes into Eventor in the beginning, right through to the last and arguably the most important Eventor task, which is getting the results uploaded. Another point is that this checklist assumes that the IOF event advisor is not also taking on the national controller role. We need to think about this. I'll talk about it more in a minute, but just to be clear, the 2026 edition of the rules will make it clearer that it will say that the national controller can also be the IOF event advisor. Not the other way around. It's the national controller can also do the IOF event advisor role. Now, we'll talk about that again in a moment. But just for clarification, this list is looking just at what the IOF event advisors should be doing. In its form, it's a Word document at the moment. It's a table, not a spreadsheet. Probably slightly easier to work with in some cases. It doesn't segment by functional area. All it tries to do is follow the timeline of the event. So we start at the beginning, we finish at the end. There are 17 phases. Now, don't view this as a 17-course dinner. Treat this more as a tasting menu. So some of these phases are bite-sized chunks. So we're going from before appointment through to the final report, looking at all the big tasks in between, the 2 visits that an EA is expected to do, and to things like what happens on the day of the competition. So it's soup to nuts through all the various courses in between. But that said, it needs to be flexible to recognise that sometimes the IOF event advisor doesn't actually get appointed right at the start of the planning for the event. Months before the event, people might say, oh gosh, we really ought to have an IOF event advisor for this event. We said we wanted it to be a world ranking event. Let's get somebody appointed. So sometimes as an event advisor, you may well find you're coming into an event which is well underway. And also, these events happen in different ways. Different things will happen at different times. As Aaron was saying, it's important it all comes together at the end, and it's also important that not too much is done with late changes. But things will happen differently. There does need to be flexibility in the way we think about this. So that's what we've been trying to do. Let's look quickly or briefly at how we deal with the phases. First of all, before you're even appointed, the checklist, you want to think about it. Here are some things to think about. If you're going to be appointed, are you going to have good working relationships with the national controller, with the organisers, with the organising club? Even before you're appointed, you are the quality assurance person. Are you happy that this event is likely to meet the sort of standards the IOF would expect? Is the terrain good enough? Will the organisers do a good enough job? Don't take the job on if you don't think it's going to be good enough. Have you been asked to do the role in time? If somebody comes to you 3-4 months before the event and saying, oh, we just realised we need an IOF advisor, has the event been well enough prepared? Is this going to be a good enough event? And I mentioned combining this with the national controller's role. Are you going to be asked to do both jobs or just one? Maybe the national controller's already been doing the job for months. So think about all of these things before you say yes to even doing the job. So this is the pre-IOF event advisor question list. Next few steps, the early courses of the meal: appointment, application, and approval. As a world ranking event, the body that will appoint you as the event advisor won't be the IOF, it will be the National Federation. That's the way the world works. So that's part of the process. Be aware of this. You're not going to get a call from me or the IOF asking you to do the job. It'll be your National Federation, probably via the organisers. As soon as you're appointed, important to actually get on and have an initial meeting with the organiser and the national controller. And if the course planner's already been appointed and is working, get the course planner involved as well. Try to explain what your role is going to be as the event advisor. Find out how the event is developing, what the basic plans are. If the event hasn't already applied to the IOF for world ranking event status, have a look at the draft application that's being put together. The application actually has to go in online from the National Federation using Eventor, but there's a template, a Word template that can be filled in. There will be a new one for events. The 2026 World Ranking events have now all applied. There will be more, there'll be a new template updated coming for events the next application round, which will begin March, April, May this coming year. So look at the template, make sure that what's on the template's right, and be happy with it. The question we see a lot is, will there be rule deviations? Now, people, I think, don't quite always understand what a rule deviation means. There are two levels. Firstly, are you actually going to deviate completely from the rules? Are you going to offer an extended middle distance race, which is not an approved distance for a world ranking event? Or are you going to just be having things that it's really, the rules say that the IOF event advisor decides. So it's up to you as the event advisor what map scale should be used, for instance. That's not a rule deviation. That's an issue that the event advisor needs to clarify. So just be clear as to what's actually happening there. And please try and avoid rules deviations unless you have to. Once the event's approved, the page will appear in the IF event tool, so you know the event is going through. And also at the same time, hopefully you as the event advisor will see to check that the embargo information has been posted on Eventor, because that should go there straight away. Course planning work. Once the course plan has been hired, you as the event advisor, are you comfortable that this person is going to be up to the task? Have a chat with the national controller, see what the thinking is. Is there already a course planning plan? Sounds complicated, but really it just needs to be a simple timeline for all the course planning work. And it really is essential to see this so that we know that people are doing the right things at the right time. And then we talked about the national controller already. The national controller is in some ways the person who is doing a lot of the heavy lifting with this event. You are there to check, to overview, to ensure quality standards. You are not there to do all of the detail. You are not duplicating what the national controller is doing. You as the event advisor are the big picture person, and quite a lot of the time you're focusing on stuff that's happening out of the forest. The national controller should be looking more at the detail, especially of the course planning. Now, the rules give the ultimate responsibility to you as the event advisor, but the national controller is doing the work under your authority. You and the national controller support each other. You don't duplicate the work, but it's very important that you and the national controller agree on who's doing what. Soon after you've been appointed, get to the event and make your first visit. But before you do that, plan ahead. See what's already going to be available. Can you get a preprint of the map before you go? Has the course planner actually got around to armchair planning some courses? Is there an organisation chart? Do you know who's going to be doing what on the organisation side of the event? Has there even been a draft of Bulletin 1 put together? Or, as one quite frequently sees, the answer to this is none of the above. But see what you can get, and also ask the question, will the organiser, the national controller, and if appointed the planner and perhaps the mapper, will they actually be able to come to be there with your first visit? Because I've seen some cases where the visit's arranged and suddenly people say, oh, sorry, I'm busy that weekend, I can't come. And it rather destroys the validity of the visit. Most importantly, once you do the visit, get out in the terrain. Is it going to be good enough? Now, how do you measure quality of terrain? It's very subjective. My question that I would ask is, when the race is over, will the athletes be happy? If you think, yes, the athletes are going to see the quality of this terrain, be happy with it, then that's the good place to be. The other question to ask is the terrain going to be big enough for your event? You're planning a world ranking event, especially if it's a long distance race. You've got some of the top elite. You've got to keep these people amused for between 88 and 92 minutes. Are you going to be able to fit that into the area you've been offered? If you've got doubts over the quality of the terrain, say so now. If you say, look, this isn't good enough for a world ranking event, say so. It's better to stop before it's too late. I've had one case where I actually said, I'm sorry, I don't think this is good enough. And the organizer looked at me, and instead of being very upset or angry, he just looked at me and he said, I'm so glad you said that. I've been thinking that for a long time. So have the conversation if you don't think it's good enough. The quality of terrain, and Helga and the Foot Overton Commission will push this time and time. We need quality. What does the mapping look like so far? If you've got a preprint of the map, you'll get a feeling for whether the terrain is being mapped consistently, whether things are being put in the right place. And likewise, as well as a course planning plan, get a mapping plan, a timeline for all the mapping work. What else should you do at the first visit? Well, look at the car parking area, look at the finish arena, look at the proposed start areas, look at the car parking and ask yourself the question, what could possibly go wrong? Because it probably will. Do you need a model event? We spoke about model events just earlier, but the rules are changing for 2026. There will no longer be a requirement to have a model event at a world ranking event. Still very much a nice to have, a good to have, but it's not always possible. If the best you can do is a few warm-up controls on the way to the start, well, then that's better than nothing. So just think about the overall logistics of the event. Which entry system is going to be used? If it's not IOF Eventor, make sure that the system that is being used will force entrants to put their IOF ID in, because we need this to make the World Ranking Events list work. Who's doing the timing and the IT? Do we know these people? Are they good? On the organizational side, are you happy there are going to be enough volunteers? Have the team leaders' workloads been shared out? Aaron just mentioned the issues with the World Championships last year. Not quite such a big thing with the World Ranking event, but still, a World Ranking event is not something that can just be organised by one man and a couple of friends. Bulletin 1. Before we do Bulletin 1, you need to think about a couple of things. The rules say that the IOF event advisor has to approve all the entry fees, and obviously those are going to be published in Bulletin 1, so you need to have sorted that out before Bulletin 1. Another question to think about is how will the organisers deal with possible entries coming from citizens from suspended federations? Now, for a world ranking event, it is possible for citizens of suspended federations or countries who aren't actually IOF members to take part. There's this IOF independent athlete scheme. So be aware of these regulations and make sure that the organisers aren't going to accept entries from people who aren't eligible to take part. This is an important job you're doing for the IOF here. This is part of your IOF quality assurance. Now, Bulletin 1 needs to be published more than 4 months before the day of the event. So talk to the organisers and see whether they have a timeline for putting it together. Then when they're being put together, read Rule 8.12. This is a big, long shopping list of all the things that need to be in Bulletin 1. Make sure that these are all going to be available. And also you need to say other things. Will there be qualification races at your World Ranking event? If there are, will you have B finals? How is the start list actually going to be prepared? Is it just going to be a straight reverse world rankings, or will you put people into pools? Which date will the rankings be looked at? That needs to be specified. And then also you need to have this reminder that the RFID is mandatory. As soon as the event is approved, you have to approve. As soon as the thing is finished, you as the IOF advisor have to formally approve it, and then it goes. Make sure it goes up on Eventor as soon as it's on the event website. Getting on into the event, regular check-ins with the national controller. He is your man on the ground. If you could join meetings with the organisers online, that's great. What sort of file sharing will there be? Next important job, first draft of the courses. Will the winning times be right? The national controller should be looking at this, so ask the national controller how you're going to check this. It's important. Has the organiser started to progress finding who's going to be on the jury? Towards the second visit, is the final draft of the map ready? Have we actually seen it printed on the paper that's going to be used? What does it actually look and feel like? And then, again, flexibility here. Maybe it's actually as late as our second visit. You four eyes review the drafts of all the courses. When I say four eyes, you are the third and fourth eye as the IOF advisor. It's the first and second eyes are, of course, the national controller. So have the IOF norms been followed? Has the length of the courses and the climb been measured properly? Are there any controls too close to each other? We've just seen this issued. I have a very strict view on this. You should follow the spirit of the rule, not just the letter of the rule. Are the controls described perfectly in accordance with the IOF specifications? These issues you need to be looking at as you go along. Bulletin 2 should be published 1 week or more before the competition. And there's always an issue as to whether this is inside or if it's a big event, is it just one part of the final details for everyone, or is there a separate Bulletin 2 specially for the world ranking participants? If it's a special one, there's going to be more work. If it's inside, you perhaps have more work translating everything into English. If it's separate, please make sure that all the information the elite competitor needs is in Bulletin 2 and they're not expected to read the final details as well. Again, there's a shopping list in the rules, and it's a very long one. Previous maps need to be put up on the website. When is the earliest start time? Very important for the athletes planning their day. How far will it be to the start? What prominent man-made features are there? Especially if you've not got a model event, you need to have photographs of the special dustbins at a sprint event, or the special monuments in the forest. How exactly will the finish work? Will people be expected to punch at the finish control, or will there just be a run-through gate, or what? Work through this during your second visit, and it's essential that every detail is correct, because the competitors are relying on it. And don't underestimate the time that it takes to do Bulletin 2. It's not quite the big job as it is Bulletin 4 for World Championships, but there's still a lot to think about. You as the EA have got to formally approve it, and again, make sure it gets up on Eventor straight away. Second visit, get out there again, get your boots on, look at the car park again. Is it still where it was going to be a year ago? Walk to the start, check the finish arena and area. Is it all looking right? Make sure that somebody's thought about exactly where the start kite's going to be, where the last control's going to be, where the finish line's going to be. Is the equipment that people are using going to be consistent with the IOF rules? What are the plans being made to actually make sure all the controls get out on time? Will the planner have sufficient resources to get all the controls out on the day, especially if you're dealing with an urban area? And especially if you're dealing with an urban area, what's being done about making sure controls don't get stolen? What's being done to make sure that gates don't find themselves locked on the day of the race? Refreshment stations, not only do you need to make sure you have enough, are they exactly where they've been put on the map? How is that going to be policed? What plans are being made to synchronize the timing system? Is there a backup timing system? The rules say there has to be one. Is there a model punching system? The rules say there has to be one. What refreshments will there be at the finish? What provision will there be made for first aid? These are all questions to ask at the second visit. What's going to happen when the maps are being printed? Is there going to be a process for the national controller to check every map that it's printed properly? How will these maps be stored securely? And again, coming back to IF Eventor, is the results contact person who was nominated when the application was made, has that person already been in touch with Eventor support? And is that person absolutely sure how the upload process is going to work? Because it needs to happen right after the race on the day. Last few days, has the start list preparer understood the job that needs to be done? Is that person fully aware of what the method is? When do they realize what the deadline is? Is there going to be enough time for you as the event advisor to do the check that the rules you're told should have to do it? Are you using the ranking list on the correct date? And is the Eventor contact person ready to get it uploaded onto Eventor in the correct file format? Do there need to be any more final approvals before the maps are sent for printing? Has there been a dry run of the timing system to load test it, as we saw at the World Masters Championships this year? They didn't do the load testing. Have you made final plans to convene the jury, set up a WhatsApp group? On the day, well, national controller's the man the person supposed to be checking everything, not you. Is the national controller that everything is out there, everything is ready to go? Have all the controls been activated? If you've got test runners, are they happy with the course? Get to the start before the first start. Is it all properly set up? Is it working well? The national controller may be busy checking all the control sites. Does the finish look all right? Is it as expected? Is the timing IT all ready? And then it all gets interesting. Find out what the reactions of the first finishers actually are. Hopefully you won't need it, but as I always say, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Is the process for dealing with complaints and convening the jury for protest, is it all ready to work? And lastly, stay until all the athletes have been accounted for. Make sure everyone's out of the forest. Because again, if there's a problem, you are the IF's representative, it doesn't look good. And at that point, I would say, relax. But no, I'm afraid, as you event advisor, there's more. Official results. Are they going to be uploaded to the event website? The rules say this has got to be done within 4 hours of the course's closing. The IOF event tour upload. Has this gone smoothly? Again, the rules say it's got to be done on the day of the competition. You've got to be involved if there are any delays. And also you need to check that what's on the official event results and what's published on the event tour, make sure they're the same. And then lastly, you need to file your final report within 4 weeks after the race. And that goes to the National Federation. It doesn't need to come to Photo Commission and the IOF unless there are unusual circumstances. Has there been a protest? Have courses been voided? Importantly, have there been any disqualifications for fair play rules infringements? So there we are. That's your 17 courses. Probably feeling pretty full by now. How should we take this forward? Well, we've got a draft checklist. This needs to be refined and road tested. One person's thinking needs to be turned into our expert group's experience. So I need your help. I need volunteers. Have you been an EA recently? Has it gone well? Or are there some lessons that you've learned that you want to share? Would you be able to spend some time looking at this version 1 draft? If you feel you want to help, drop me an email. There'll be a draft of the V1 in the Teams folder so that everybody can comment and see what everybody else is thinking. Hopefully we can then publish this early next spring as a beta test version, and that'll be on the event advising page in the IF website. So that's the checklist. That's where we are. Just one final news item. The 2026 edition of the World Ranking Events Manual will be published in late January. It's drafted. It just needs to be approved by the Photo Commission. Do we have any questions?
Not exactly a question, but there is a comment from Kel about the national country-specific ruling. He proposed that he's made a Danish version of differences between the Danish championships and the WRE, and he's suggesting that every country should do the same for their own differences between the WRE and their own rules.
I think this is a very important point, and I think there's a very clear answer, and sometimes it can be a little difficult. A world ranking event is organized under IOF rules. The world ranking event, which will be the M&W 21 elite courses, they need to follow the IOF's rules. The rest, if it's a big event, national championships, you know, the D16 and the D60 courses, those don't have to follow the IOF's rules. They must follow the Danish Federation's rules, the local host federation's rules. But to be absolutely clear, and this is spelt out in the rules, if it's an IOF event, it's the IOF rules apply, and it's your job as the event advisor to make sure if there are any discrepancies that international practice is followed, not local practice.
Just for now, I don't see any other comments or questions. Oh, sorry. Kel, go ahead, Kel.
Yeah, just to clarify, I agree with you, David, with, about that. Of course, it's the IOF rules that apply on the M21, Women 21 classes, etc. And my point is that you have to make sure that the organizers know that as well. So I've made this 4-page note on what the difference and what they should be aware of when they're making a world ranking event, where the difference is between that and a normal Danish championship. So that they should
in the
know
full
that
version of the draft checklist, this exact point is there. Big picture early on in the checklist. Does the organizer understand that this difference arises? Yeah. So it's there, very, very visibly in the checklist
so
draft.
This is just an invitation for other countries to do the same. It's not specific with you about your presentation.
Okay, well, let's say hopefully people will want to help with this initiative, but hopefully some useful good will come out of it, and I will be happy to share anything with anyone. So that's my presentation done. Back to you, Helga.
Thanks a lot, David, and thanks for a very clear presentation. I think everyone who is working with world ranking events really now has a great checklist to start out with, and I'm really hoping that someone